Hey, good morning, folks. Episode 4 of our Strong 4 conversation with my good friend, mentor, brother in Iron Game, Ed Cosner, Coach Goonan, Coach Justin Goonan here with you from Universal Sports. Coach Cosner joining us from New Orleans, Louisiana with Type 5 Performance. Super excited. A lot of stuff to cover today. We're going to try and keep it as short as possible. But Ed, good to see you. Had a big weekend. Lexington, South Carolina.
Yes, sir.
Sore Summer Strong. I still remember. Geez, I've got the magazine. I've got the Velcro patch. I've got the T-shirts from. Let's see. I believe it was 10 that I went to. And yeah, you want to talk about feeling like a small fish in a big pond. And I mean that in the literal sense, being the smallest person in the room. But give us a quick overview of the weekend. What were kind of the key events and what were kind of the big nuggets you took out of it?
I took some pretty big nuggets out. But the one that hit me the hardest was remember the importance of continuing building your networks. Like I said, I talked to a couple of guys that I'd met before, that I had no idea that I'd met before or anything else, and not just that they're well placed in the world of strength conditioning, but they're really good dudes with a lot of stuff to share and everything else, and just continuing to build and nurture your networks that you work so hard to get with. And then there's some really good talks with a lot of guys, and that a couple that were kind of stand out was Aaron Asmus and Coach Tommy Moffitt from LSU, Jesse Ackerman from the Atlanta Falcons, and then the guy that's the new strength coach, Luke, I think is his name, at South Carolina, gave a great talk, and it had very little to do with the X's of O's of strength conditioning, but it had more to do with the balance in life and the importance of the balance in life between you, your family, you, and your athletes. So yeah, it was good. We have to get you back out next year. Unfortunately, Ben Franks couldn't come over because the United States is still closed down to travel. So next year, Ben Franks will be coming over to talk about the culture within the All Blacks, and that should be a really good talk.
Yeah, definitely. And it's usually third week of May, right?
It's the third week of May, the weekend before the Memorial Day holiday, and it's over Friday and Saturday. It's one fee, and you never leave.
Yeah,
you're fed like a king the entire time. Steaks on Saturday night, steak and shrimp on Saturday night. Food Friday when you check in, food, breakfast on Saturday morning. Like yogurt and fruit and all of that. For the guys that maybe spent a little too long there Friday night networking with beer, and it's obviously it's South Carolina. It's hot and humid. So you get back to your hotel room on Friday night, you take your shower, you're just like, oh, wow, I'm going to sleep until Sunday. But the first talk is always a good, exciting talk on Saturday. So you got to get there.
Yeah, no, for sure. Yeah, definitely a memorable time. And talking about networking, I mean, there's some great coaches, great people and professionals that I met that, you kind of stretched me and encouraged me to connect with when I was there a few years ago that I still, reach out to. And so yeah, definitely great lessons, great reminders. And more than anything, glad that I can't even remember. I'm sure it was canceled last year. So glad that glad they were able to kind of get that back on track.
A huge turnout for it.
Yeah, for sure. I think I know at Summer Strong 10, I know they had talked about having to put a cap on the attendance. Was that the case this year?
Yeah, that was the case this year.
So yeah, it's definitely one of those you got to get in when the doors open.
Got to get in as soon as the doors open. Yep.
Good stuff. Well, hey, to kind of keep things rolling here, episode 4 last time, we kind of gave a deeper dive into what we want to achieve and what we want to share, through these conversations. So for today's strong 4, we're still talking about being strong for rugby, but wanted to zoom in a little bit more in your area of expertise, still in the type 5, but focus in on the hooker specifically. And again, the work that you've done with some of my players here at Indiana and some of the other programs, more than anything, you bring a unique perspective to not just to the type 5, but to hookers, especially because of your background with throwing, shot and disc and of course, even with the Highland Games. And so I know we've had multiple conversations about such similarities between the hooker and other, athletes from other sports. But
Right.
what are some key takeaways when you're working or talking to a hooker or a coach about a hooker? What are, kind of some common areas that you bring into that conversation?
Well, to me, the first one is flexibility and mobility for that athlete. And without going into too much, you don't always have to have it as a separate part. Of course you're going to warm up, of course you're going to get mobile, of course you're going to do that. But one of the main lifts that you're going to do especially as a forward is the squat. So looking at it that way, people, we want to get you to squat as deep as you can comfortably and get you down there, ankle mobility, flexibility there, knee, hip, and it goes all the way up to the thoracic spine, which is hugely important, that people don't really think about. So I don't allow the hands to go all the way out. I want the hands in kind of tight. I want to get flexible there. If you're inflexible there, you're a poor scrummager, because you're going to collapse. So so we can get there, we can get stronger right there, get those hands in, fairly tight. It takes time to work them in sometimes if they're inflexible, but the more flexible there, easier it is to get those hands over your head for that ball, to come in on a line out throw. And I have a really, so the front rowers, there are a lot of hang cleans, a lot of power cleans. Well, instead of hang cleans so much with my hookers, I use a clean grip muscle snatch. So, and it's always going to be in a combination, like 3 high pulls, and a high pull for me is I want the bar to go from mid thigh. And if it doesn't hit you in the nose, the chin, it's not high enough. So, and then, 3 of those and 3 muscle snatch where you'll take the bar and finish over your head, but you're still going to be in that narrower position because, we want to be flexible here. I don't need to be flexible way out here. And then to finish that off, to make sure that you're working that flexibility of the shoulders, the upper back and everything else, 5 behind the neck press. I'm not telling you to go down and touch the base of your neck, but you need to be close. You at least got to touch your fat wrinkle. Oh, hookers have fat wrinkles? I think only the props have fat wrinkles. You want to go down and at least get down by your ear and then put the bar down. And I like the muscle snatch because I don't want that much velocity on the snatch. I want it just to be finish, and it's for your narrow grip, you're going to be long in your finish. And then the last one I always put in on that one right after that would be an exercise I stole, developed, heisted, whatever you want to say, put my own personal twist on it from javelin throwers. So instead of a 1 arm, obviously it's a 2 arm, but a med ball drop with about a 6 to 8 pound med ball. You don't really want something super heavy. 10 pounds would be enough, but you have the athlete lay crosswise of the bench and you have someone else standing over them. And I usually use a pretty tall box so I can get a good drop on that. And all you do is simply drop the ball, catch it, hold, and then throw it back. It stretches everything, but you get a great stretch reflex off of it. And then always to contrast that, because it's about being a better rugby player, not just about being a better lifter or anything, is to go outside and do do 3 or 4 line out throws, whether it's from your knees, whether it's from standing, just tossing it into a net, the wall, or having somebody else down there if you're lucky enough to have a training partner and get up on a box. So
Yeah. No, that's awesome. And kind of obviously you started out talking about flexibility, mobility, which is key. And then you touched on the behind the neck press, and I know, at least for me with my experience, the biggest question that I get, whether it's from athletes or coaches, is, well, isn't that dangerous? Isn't that bad for you? And what's kind of your response to those?
actually, if you're an athlete, you can't get your hands back that way to do that, then your shoulders are really screwed up, and you probably should start looking for maybe another sport to play. Honestly,
Yeah.
it is the way that weightlifters are taught to press. You're not taught from the front. Everybody thinks, because from the front, you have to learn how to set your chin, get yourself ready, and go. It is a straight line up. I also, if you're doing we don't just do a standing one or a seated one where we're touching. We're only going to come down to where it's comfortable. So maybe here, parallel with the ear. If you go lower than that as a lifter, or like throwers a lot do it, it's going to be a push press. You're never going to just stand and grind it up. Yeah, because that's going to kill you shoulder wise. It's the same thing, behind the neck pull downs, not that great. I mean, but behind the neck press, and a lot of times, and you've seen it before in my gym when I've done it, is seated or standing, and it's always with a power. If I'm going to just do a press, not a push press, if I'm just looking for the basic start, it's going to be, I'm going to have pins set. So I cannot go lower than there. So that's the safer way of doing it.
Yeah.
No, it doesn't rely on wrist flexibility too. You got guys in the front row, a lot of them, the wrists get beat up, shoulders get beat up. They cannot get in that position in the front very well. Take them to the back, and you control where they're lowering it. And then I always play a game on the quieter you can lower the bar, the better you are. So I get that eccentric strength out of them where they don't even think about it, and I don't have to explain it to them. But lowering that bar, nice, quiet, touch, relax, flex, drive. So there's safe ways of doing every exercise. There's unsafe ways of doing every exercise. You just got to be a smart enough coach to do it the safest way possible, and then take your time. I mean, if you got guys that just can't get in that position, well, they're not going to be able to get their hands behind their neck, their hands in tight enough to do it for a squat either. So you have to start working. You have to work at it. It may take 4 to 6 weeks before you get them comfortable. Paul Mullen was that way when I first started training him. And a conversation I had with the guru of the world in the scrummaging with Mike Chrono, sitting in his hotel room when the All Blacks were in Chicago to play Ireland. And he did not understand what I was talking about like that until I showed him, and we sat there and we experimented with it, and his eyes popped up. He's like, what the heck? Why don't other strength coaches think like that? Like, I don't know. Yeah. It's the way I think. I'm interested in developing the entire kinetic chain, the entire athlete. I don't want to just develop bits and pieces.
Yeah. And I think a lot of times athletes too, like with the behind the neck press, and I've even had, similar queries with good mornings, when you've had that programmed for other athletes is, you might not be able to get the full range that you're suggesting, that you're prescribing, but do that in your build-up sets.
Yeah.
Do that with the lighter weight to where you can control it safely. That you're not saying it has to be, with your ultimate max load or max effort every time.
Yeah. So it's the same thing for good mornings. It's not going to be a strength exercise. There are other ways of doing it where it doesn't have to be that. You're not a power lifter, trying to figure out how to grind through the middle of a squat or anything else. And then there's other ways of doing it safely as well, as like using the safety squat bar. Taking a plate, taking as simply as taking a 20-kilo plate, put it on the back of your head and go and doing it. Learning that pivot, because guys that are playing in college and through, and a lot of guys have a real issue learning how to hinge at the hip and not round at the thoracic spine.
Yeah.
rounded the thoracic spine and engage with the team on the other side of the scrum. And all you're going to do is go straight into the ground. That's all you're going to do. You can't
Yeah.
do anything else. That's not a stable column. It's not straight. It's not a straight line. Physics says you lose.
Yeah. No, good stuff. Yeah, and definitely, I mean, three great points for hookers to think about, and consider, and hopefully, if they're doing their own stuff, start incorporating into their own routine, or if they're one of the innovative or motivated and lucky few that signed up, they can definitely be expecting to do some of that and more of that over the next
Expect to do some
next
of
3
that,
weeks.
especially and once the second phase starts, they'll see that the certain exercises will have one for the props, one for the hookers, and an exercise, a variation for the locks. There's several times where I break that apart.
Yeah. No, that's awesome, and that's where the program that you're launching next week. I mean, that's where no, it might not be for that individual, that person of an athlete, but it's going to be for that position of an athlete, and that's one of
Right.
the added values that I know for a fact from experience that folks who are signing up for that. I know you've had a lot of interest since
A lot of interest.
the cat got out of the bag last week.
Yeah. And then I took off on a long drive from New Orleans to South Carolina.
Yeah. So, but still got a few days, and
Still got a few days,
registration is open.
Yep.
Yeah, registration is open until when are you closing the doors on that?
On Saturday.
Saturday. Okay. Yeah, Saturday. Monday's Memorial Day, and then they get to work on
Yep.
June
They'll get to
1st.
work. They'll get to work on June 1st.
So good stuff, Coach. Well, thanks for those tips. We'll definitely be back next week to touch on one of the back row positions. But hookers, flexibility, mobility, the clean grip, muscle snatch, behind the neck press, and definitely the med ball drop throws. I think you got videos of that up on your YouTube channel. We'll try and put a link to that
I think
in
I
the
did.
show notes.
I will send them to you. I can get them up on my Type 5 Performance Instagram page.
Yeah, no, for sure.
All
All right. Sounds great. Well, yeah, hopefully, and of course, if someone out there hasn't registered or signed up for your 12-week program, still time to do that. They can find you on Instagram,
Yep.
Ed Cosner or Type 5 Performance,
Right.
or they can email you at edcosner@gmail.com. We'll put links to that in all the show notes as well.
All right.
Good stuff.